The Smithsonian Faculty Fellowship Program represents a rewarding academic professional development opportunity for faculty at Montgomery College. The fellowships are a product of a unique collaboration between Montgomery College and the Smithsonian Center for Learning and Digital Access. It's the first of its kind between the Smithsonian Institution and a community college.
After college at the University of Central Florida, Jamie Gillen taught high school English, then designed a tutoring curriculum and trained teachers. Following graduate school at the College of Charleston, Jamie taught all levels of English at Trident Tech College, St. Petersburg College, and the University of Tampa, all before coming to Montgomery College. Now in her third year at MC, she coordinates English 102, critical reading, writing, and research, teaches honors, tutors in the PACE program, and even serves on or heads several active committees, all while striving to have a positive impact on the MC community. Outside of MC, Jamie enjoys reading, swimming, hiking, stand-up paddling, attending cultural events, and traveling the world.
Together, we can achieve more. I often begin my semester with this exact phrase to my students. Together, in English, we can work together, collaborate, and produce a better product. So I invite you now in the same manner. I was really inspired this semester, or I should say in 2015, by my colleagues. Each of you really helped me to push forward to help students get to a new height, to a level that I had previously been unaware that students could actually attain. So I was really thankful for my colleagues. And I'd like to actually frame my conversation today around the students and the successes that the students were able to achieve. As you can see up here, it says that students were inspired to think critically. Very true. While they participated in non-traditional classroom settings. When they got beyond the classroom, when they got outside of the walls and they grew in this community atmosphere, that they had higher quality work, and that was evident all along. So I decided, because of the nature of the English discipline, that I would loop in the element of the Smithsonian Fellowship into each one of my courses. So the courses that I had last semester were English 102, Critical Reading, Writing, and Research, Introduction to Literature, and Introduction to College Writing. The lion's share of my talk today is going to be about the integration of the theme into my research writing class. In this class, students are focusing on two major skill sets. One, their research writing abilities, and secondly, on their argumentation skills. The signature assignment for this class is an 8 to 10 page, 10-source research paper, which is very daunting for them at the beginning of the semester, but they really do get there, and it's fantastic to watch. This theme really speaks to our incredibly diverse student population. This is sort of the outline of my 102 class from last fall. You can see they came from all over the world and had all types of identities. This is sort of a basic outline for the assignment progression. Each assignment is a building block to lead to that 8 to 10 page, 10-source paper. And you'll see as we visited the museums that they were hitting upon the different building blocks to hit 8 to 10 pages, 10 sources. So we did an ambitious 3 visits to the museum. And so we first went to the Museum of the American Indian and visited the Nation to Nation exhibit there. Then as a whole class, we went to the Portrait Gallery. And finally, the end of the semester, we went to the American History Museum. When my honors cohort went to the National Museum of the American Indian, I took them there. It was a Sunday afternoon. It's just a few people, so it's a very low-stress way to introduce them to what a museum is like. And my question to them is, how does one of the objects, just one of the objects in this exhibit, or even in the museum, relate to our course theme? Okay? And then they had to come up with a presentation that talked about this. And I had done this once before, but I was really impressed when we were framed around immigration as a theme, the types of connections that they were able to make. And then something unexpected happened. the students themselves, it's only like week 4, week 5 in the semester, the students started to become enthusiastic. They wanted to go to the museum too. They were actually sad that they didn't have to give up their Sunday and go to the museum with their professor. So this is one of my students, Samantha, giving a presentation. This is another student, Ed. You'll hear more about a couple of them later. So then everybody got their opportunity. A similarly cold morning in October, we got to go to the National Portrait Gallery. I have to tell you, this is an impressive shot for many reasons. First off, they were all on time. And that's a feat, getting downtown on time. Not only that, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. And some of them look like me when I haven't had my coffee, but most of them are actually enthusiastic and ready to be there. So that was wonderful. And so why were they actually so enthusiastic? Because Brianna White, who is the educator at the Portrait Gallery, and she's fantastic, opened the museum before it opened and scheduled a tour with my students. So they knew that they were coming for this very special moment in time that they wouldn't get in if they weren't on time. And so they made it. What did we see? We went to go visit the 4 justices, Shimamura crossing the Delaware, and the IPOP Gallery. And this is the point in the semester where they're about to embark on their research journey. And as they're about to embark on that research journey, they are looking for their own hook into immigration. What do you want to spend the next 9 weeks of your life researching about? You're going to spend a lot of time thinking, breathing this subject matter. So we were there investigating what could be a possibility. So while we were there, we first stopped at the 4 justices. This is the 4 female Supreme Court justices portrait. And you can see that they're learning both from Brianna and from the portrait, and they're kind of getting a sense of how do we read a portrait. We've done some of the preparation work in class, but it's different when you're standing there. They were very surprised at how big some of the portraits are, and how the frame is important in the scope of things. So this is sort of like a starter, and they were able to identify our theme as they went through the oldest to youngest justice as well. Then we also went to go see Shimamura crossing the Delaware because it's just so perfect for our theme. I was really impressed with the ability that my students had to connect pieces back to our course discussion and to our theme of immigration. They got things out of this portrait that I myself didn't get out of it, and that my entire cohort, when we went to visit it, didn't get out of it. So they just like knocked my socks off, and I was all happy about that. And then we finally went and saw the IPOP Gallery, which this is about celebrities that are living at this moment in time. It's a temporary exhibit, and then they got to go and find. They just went around mostly on their own to find examples of immigrants who are currently celebrities, and they had all kinds of cool ideas to report back and share with the group. So that was great. So then they turn in their proposals for research, and they were so interesting. Sometimes you get proposals for research, and it's like, I'm bored reading it. You're going to be very bored by week 4 or 5 of research. But for the most part, they were great. Later in the semester, when they are preparing their final papers, that 8 to 10 page, 10 source paper, we went to the American History Museum. So this time they didn't have a special tour that opened the museum early. They just had a professor-guided tour. And we visited the Innovation Wing, and then they had the opportunity to go off and have some unstructured time. And so goal number 1 was when we were in the Innovation Wing to find a source they could potentially use in that last paper, and goal number 2 in the unstructured time was to find a second potential source, and many of these sources did end up in those final papers. They had to take a selfie and send it to me. Right? I use an app called Remind that allows us to communicate via cell phones without me having their phone number or vice versa. They really got into that, taking the selfie and sending it to me thing. So this is a few shots of them really enjoying themselves. By this time, they're used to the museum. They know what it's like. They liked American history because it's loud. Zach is nodding his head. It's loud. It's boisterous, so they can be more creative and inventive. It's not the quietness of a pre-museum open gallery. A few more. These are students standing next to the objects they found that they wanted to use as sources within the exhibit. And finally, some of their unstructured fun time and selfies sent to me. So what happened as a result? Some of the outcomes from this class, most of them completed successfully, which was fantastic. Four of my students from this class are presenting next week at the Maryland Collegiate Honors Conference, and that's pretty awesome. Yeah. Kudos to them. They had outstanding final papers, honors or not. So you can see by the complexity of some of their topics and just the titles themselves lend themselves to very interesting and unique research. Finally, or I shouldn't say finally, next, one of my students actually discovered his career, or what he hopes will be his career, in ethnomusicology. I had to look it up when he told me what that was. So I'm learning in the process too. Less tangible, but perhaps more important than traditional outcomes, students were really excited to come to class. They were enthusiastic about the material. They wanted to go to the museum. They were motivated. I had this fantastic teacher moment where partway through class one day, I was getting towards the end, a student raised his hand and said, "Yes, Jeff?" He says, "I wish we had more time in this class." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Well, we're learning so much and it's so much fun. I wish it was longer." Okay, that's a great teacher moment. And they really did get deeper into the research. Sometimes they stay so surface level, and this is a way to encourage them to go deeper. Another outcome that I got to participate in this last year was an event that we called Conversations About Immigration, and this really grew out of our work with their students. So we wanted to have a way to discuss immigration in a less formal setting here on campus. So actually in this room here, we transformed it into a modern salon, an intimate dinner party. All right, and here's it is filling up. We had 8 tables with 5 each. We invited all members of the community and the MC community as well. We had students, faculty, administrators, staff, community members, all sitting at the same table, wearing just first name tags, and had an excellent conversation and great food. The students loved the food. Some other more tangible outcomes from that dinner is that every attendee rated the dinner as either highly valuable or valuable based on their little slips from leaving the room. Every table wanted to report out their conversation, and a student led that conversation at each table. Students tell us that they really felt valued and heard, and we have learned how we can better impact our own immigrant international and international students, and some smiles from our event. And I was not alone in that event. You saw many of the familiar faces sitting at these tables and certainly helping me to orchestrate. Switching gears, my introduction to literature class, we also went to the National Portrait Gallery, and again, for a second time, Brianna White opened the museum early, showed up at 8 a.m. along with my excited students to have this wonderful experience. So what was the goal while we were there? This is a totally different class. The goal while we were there was to connect portraits to poetry. We were in the middle of our poetry unit, and we connected portraits to poetry. They did most of the work there. I left it kind of open-ended, which was fairly risky on my end. And they went to see lots of different sitters, and the difference here was that we were looking at living sitters, so people who are currently represented in literature, but also music, film, sports, etc. But the criteria for the morning was that they were all alive. I wanted them to take poetry and things potentially by writers who are no longer living and try to make connections to our current world. So when they got back to class, they had poetry presentations, and then they later wrote about things in their final exams, the connections that they found. here are a few examples. So in one of the galleries on either end, there's two walls, right? And one side is LL Cool J, and the other side is Toni Morrison, who you see at the top. My plan was that they would be interested in the LL Cool J because, well, first off, they know who he is, right? Secondly, it's an attractive portrait. It's got color, it's vibrant, he's very well dressed, you know, you're drawn to it immediately. But I was very surprised to find that almost all of my students connected more clearly to Toni Morrison. That the gaze that she has, the confidence, the steeliness of her demeanor, and the simplicity of the work itself, they all connected to that. And so they talked about that in either their poetry presentation or their final exam. And this is Nate. Nate and I both really liked this portrait, so we had our photo. Nate says, "My view of art in general shifted purely based on the tour of the National Portrait Gallery. Never had I given much thought to the vast connections that could be made between visual art and literature." And to me, that speaks volumes to what they learned and successful student experience. My last class, we went to, this is my 101A PACE class. We went to the National Museum of American History. What did we do there? We again had a very special experience. Each one of my classes got to have a unique experience. And their unique experience is that they also had a guided tour with Cedric Ye. They just loved him, right? This particular population of students, this is the PACE population. This is a population of students that wouldn't be able to take a credit level class, but because of the special program that PACE is, they are enabled to take their first ever college credit level class. And this particular population really liked Cedric because he is witty, and he's got this dry humor, and they just ate it up. He's got insider stories, so we would be all around, and they weren't so interested necessarily in what he had to say about the work, but they listened to the stories, and they remembered his stories. We also got to go into the freight elevator, which was a big hit. We got to go into his storage areas, and his storage areas are so smashed with stuff that I actually thought, it was a really large group because I told them to bring their friends, and they did, and their families and their kids. And Cedric was a trooper. He brought everybody on into his crowded storage area, and I actually thought I was going to lose some or that they would break something, but they didn't. And they had a great time. So this is them learning from Cedric. And finally, their connected assignment. We were moving into the last unit of our class, the final paper. Their goal here in the food exhibit that a couple of people have highlighted was to find an object that spoke to them, an object that they wanted to investigate further to figure out how did it get to America? What is the sort of journey that this object took? Because almost everything there came from somewhere else and has transformed our own American dining experience. So these are some students near their objects, the rice cooker, and grocery stores. This student is from Africa, from the Congo, and he had never seen a grocery store, so he was very interested in how we got that concept. And so this is all of us at the giant table in that exhibit at the end of our visit, talking about their objects and their next steps. And finally, in the last day of class during their final exam, they all brought food and we had a party. Right? They brought examples of their home cultures. Lastly, I'm planning to do this again, right? I'm currently working through similar concepts in all of my classes because it was so successful with the students and it was such an engaging experience and really, even for especially for the research students, brought that level of class up. And it's already starting to happen again, and that's really exciting. I'd like to look at Edward Song's comment here. Throughout my visits to the American Indian, National Portrait Gallery, and American History Museums, I have learned the impact immigration has had on America. The focus and specialization each country and individual has brought here created America's strength today. Therefore, America should not cut relationships with other nations, but rather create stronger relationships. And I can tell you that not only is that an excellent quote from a student, that he did not feel that way when we began the class. And through his experience and through the research process that he took for his own paper, this was actually, he told me this in my office when we were conferencing about that last paper. So very, very impressive student work. And I would like to say that this experience really does make an impact on students. It does make a difference. And I would like to, in gratitude, thank not only my cohort, but especially Sarah, Mimi, and Denise for all of their hard work, and the Paul Beck Humanities Institute as well. Thank you.